Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. I have a very interesting topic to talk about today. One I've always been fascinated about with as an astrologer and a Chinese medicine practitioner, acupuncture herbal medicine, and that's to do with the concept of blood. The blood in astrology, the blood as how we I guess the whole concept of blood from a Chinese medical point of view is interesting as well as astrologically. So I just wanted to do a short video on this because I find the subject fascinating when we look at blood. Now, over the years, as an acupuncturist, I got right into bloodletting and I've studied the ancient Chinese, ancient bloodletting zones, which correspond to the body obviously, and it's a very unique thing to do. And I guess a lot of people with in terms of for those acupuncturists out there are used to the filiform needle, but we've got to remember there's 9 needles the ancient Chinese used to do, and they used to use the piercing needle as well. Now obviously you need a lot of experience doing this, so I'm just talking generally for so people just can understand the concepts a little bit and how the ancients used to do this and reasons why. But I found in astrology too, astrology is extremely interesting when it comes to blood because the blood is ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter generally rules the arterial circulation. There's an affiliation obviously with the sign of Leo because the heart. Leo connects to the heart. The heart's the sovereign ruler from a Chinese medical point of view. The heart is the emperor. It's the it houses the concept of Shen, and each organ in Chinese medicine correlates to a soul, right? And one of them, Shen is the spirit, resides in the heart. And of course, the arterial circulation is ruled by Jupiter and Venus, but of course, the sign that rules this is an Aquarius. And Aquarius is ruled, and the planet Uranus is connected with Aquarius is connected with the pulse. And this is why we can have, most every astrologer knows Uranus can bring sudden change, right, in things. And this is why the pulse can change very quickly when it comes to medical problems. Like so heavily afflicted Aquarian south nodes, things like this, or Uranus in difficult angles to Venus and Jupiter as well can interrupt the pulse as well. There's a few other things, just really basic examples here. But I just want to get people affiliated with the concept of blood and how the ancients used this. Also, the sun from a Chinese medical point of view, because the sun oxygenates the cells, has a lot to do with the blood. And of course, Mars as well for the iron in the blood. Mars rules metal. Now, a very interesting concept here. I mean, in the astral body, Jupiter has direct correlation to the blood. Now, this is a very interesting concept because the ancient Chinese were Taoists, right? And in Taoism, every organ has a soul. Like I said before, the heart, the Shen. Well, the liver stores what they call Hun, the Hun, which is deeply affected to the collective unconscious, but it stores memory. So blood holds memory, it holds trauma. This is one of the main reasons in acupuncture why we would go to, say, a bloodletting treatment. I mean, there's many other things specifically related to medicine, but just on that psyche point of view, the liver stores blood and it houses the Hun, and it is connected to trauma. It holds memory, and this is one of the vital things about this that's really important. Now, the Hun, like I said before, stores our memories and our collective unconscious. So when we go to sleep at night, the liver stores blood. And if the blood is not getting stored into the liver, then the Hun's not protected. And this is what we're talking about, the astral body. This is when people can have nightmares, dream disturbed sleep, very vivid dreaming, like wandering off to dimensions or places where they shouldn't actually really go. It's also when they have the sleep that's half in, half out. They feel like they're asleep, but they're actually awake. This kind of thing. And the Hun is what separates the separation of yin and yang. They talk about this in alchemy, so to speak, but the Hun and the Po are concepts, quite esoteric concepts in ancient Taoism. And the Hun is what ascends when we pass away, the separation of yin and yang, and the Po is what descends into the earth. And so we take our memories, our collective memories, what our experiences with us when we do pass. And it's deeply connected to the blood, and the blood houses the spirit. And for concepts such as Dian Kuang in Chinese medicine, which translates to mania, things like this, we would always bleed points, because this is why a lot of people self-harm when they've actually had severe trauma. It's not the most elegant way of doing it, but this is when they do, because they can release the emotion or the trauma out of the blood. It provides an outlet for it. The ancient Chinese have specific areas for this. They have zones in the body, different zones. So this is not nothing to do with this concept. People kind of tend to laugh in your face a little bit about leeching, having leeches and stuff like this. This is not what I'm talking about. It's very, very specific. And I've noticed indirectly, clinically, when people come in with back problems, disc herniation, sciatica, for example, because primarily in Chinese medicine, we would bleed for this. Well, I do. And it's very, very effective. But I've had people actually change their whole lives after this. I mean, in some of the acupuncture books, some of my colleagues have said people have, because it shifts the consciousness, it shifts the mind, it pulls you out of stasis. It gives you direct clarity into, and I've noticed this with people, like they've either been in a job for so many years, they hate it, they feel like they're stuck, they're in stasis, and I've done this kind of treatment just for one example. And then a few weeks after, they come and see you and they go, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. And they quit and they change their life, and they've changed their whole career direction to do something more fulfilling, which I found fascinating. Now, the ancient Chinese, in medical astrology, sorry, not the ancient Chinese, in medical astrology, let's get onto this, because the moon is an important planet, right? Because the moon in medical astrology was always important because it's very close. They wouldn't call it a planet, they call it a luminary. It's very close to the earth. So it deeply affects the body and deeply affects the health. Now the moon, which I'm going to do a talk on this later on, I'm not sure when, is a very, very interesting thing to talk about, particularly when you get into the research of what the Nazis were doing, what they thought the moon was. And there's a whole lot of things I really want to get into about the moon, because I think it's not what a lot of people think it is, which is interesting. But in medical astrologies would never ever operate when a sign is in a moon sign. For instance, like if you needed brain surgery and there was a full moon coming up in Aries, you wouldn't have surgery in that date when the moon's in Aries, because there's high chance of hemorrhage. Or another example, say you needed a thyroid operation and the full moon was in Taurus, you wouldn't operate around that time because there's high chance of hemorrhage. This is the basic thing about medical astrology and what they used to talk about. And I follow the same rule actually in my clinic when it comes to the moon being in Leo. I won't bloodlet. So I've got a moon diary, a calendar and things like this, and obviously an ephemeris, being an astrologer. So I won't. I will hold off on that kind of thing, because it can make the heart weaker. And you know, we don't really want to do that. This is me being kind of nitpicking. Some people might not think that is the case, but it can. You've got to be there's a whole preparation when it comes to these kind of treatments. It's not kind of my place to do that, but I just wanted to introduce this subject to people because I find it really, really interesting that the concept of blood in medicine, and particularly from a psych point of view, is fascinating. And this is why a lot of the ancient Chinese, when they did the pulses, 28 different pulse types, they could actually read what's going on in someone's psyche from the pulse because of this. So they could pick up the trauma, where it's held in the body, things like this. So yeah, the whole concept of blood and blood in medical medicine is extremely fascinating. And a lot of the medicine we're having these days corrupts the blood. And it's interesting to note that anything that corrupts blood is going to corrupt the mind and turn people into what Zhang Ji would say in Shanghan Lun, to be possessed. And it's interesting what's happened the last 4 years, because lately, what I've seen in clinic and what I've noticed out in the world is not looking good at that on that note. So it's important to keep your blood hygienic and clean, because when the blood is clean and hygienic, you're actually sanitizing the psyche. So bloodletting treatments do sanitize the psyche. Eating good food will sanitize the psyche, because what we eat produces the quality of blood that's circulating around the body, and that's obviously going to affect our spirit and mind. Something very important to pay attention to. So I wanted to just introduce these kind of subjects. It's very basic, I know, but I think it's good to put in people's consciousness how astrology and the body are connected, and things we look at in terms of cultivating and sanitizing and cleaning our own blood. And for those practitioners out there, it just puts another idea of how to look into concepts like this. And I think medical astrology is incredibly valuable. And I personally think there's a few ways of looking into it. One is the natal charts, transits, progressions, things like this. But ultimately, I think horary astrology is far more accurate and incredibly valuable in terms of looking into health conditions. And that's a subject for another time. But all types of astrology are valuable as well. I mean, I always look into Bazi, Chinese astrology, because Chinese astrology obviously is deeply connected to Chinese medicine. Now, subscribe. If you're interested in these subjects, especially Chinese astrology, I've got a book called The Beginner's Guide to Chinese Astrology. Sorry, my course is called The Fundamentals of Chinese Astrology. People are interested in those subjects. And stay tuned, because I am going to come up with some more little sequences about astrology. And thank you for listening, guys, and I appreciate your subscriptions.